rate of change and slope. So when you are given data that can be identified as domain and range, or the independent variable and dependent variable, the rate of change is defined as change in y over the change in x. With word problems, what you are going to need to do is identify what those domain and range, or x and y variables are. Big hint, if you have measures of time, seconds, minutes, hours, years, months, days, those will most of the time be your x values. So if you see those, go, aha, those are my x values. So these other numbers, these other measures are my y values. So that will make it slightly less challenging to identify your data out of your word problems. So here's an example. You've got this great big word problem with actually two rates of change in it. It says in 2000, 23,142 students applied to State College and 34,689 students applied to Central University. In 2008, 29,563 students applied to State College and 36,107 applied to Central University. Determine the average rate of change in applicants for both schools from 2000 to 2008. Now, if you want the rate of change for both schools, it means you need to do State College and Central University. So for instance, let me show you what we would do for State College. Now, because you want to know from 2000 to 2008, and knowing that measures of time will be your x values, you know your amount of time here, you know your kind of the two measurements, or your change in x actually. So it's from 2000 to 2008. I always like to make that a positive value, so I would do 2008 minus 2000. So, and I always think of rise over run. You could think of this as change in y over change in x. That would have been better for me to write. So I would have done this down here, change in y over change in x. So my State College was here. Here's 2008, 29,563, and 2000, 23,142, and that is how I got my top numbers. Okay? All right, so moving on, slope is the ratio of the change in y coordinates, like rate of change, to the corresponding change in the x coordinates, like rate of change. And the slope of the line is the same as its rate of change. So rate of change and slope, same thing. And of course, here's your slope coordinates. And we've discussed that, and you've done it a lot in Algebra 1, but just a reminder. And here's the visual way that you can do slope. It is rise over run. So your change in y, which is a difference, which is subtraction, over the change in x, which is subtraction again. And that is how we get our slope formula. So if they ask you to find the slope of a line and it passes through these two coordinates, -2, 0, and 0, -3, you can do your slope formula. You can also do it visually. You can go down from -2, 0. What is your rise? That is a -3. And then what is your run? How do you get from where you've quote-unquote risen, which was going down, and run over to the next good point, to that point that they told you about, 0, -3. Well, you ran over a +2. You went right. You went in the +2 direction. We could also put these into our y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We can do that as well. So we can do these together as well. We could identify two good points and find that slope. Pay attention to scale if we do this slope. And you can write these down, and we will go over it and see what you get for slope. So I would record these points. What are we going up by? You see 4 and 8, but there's grids in between. So what number is between 0 and 4? What number is between 4 and 8? So pay attention to this scale. If there's nothing given to you, what are these grids going to be? So what are these points? Okay. And then the challenge with your book is, what are those actual points that, what are the best points on your line? So if you don't find really good points on your book, look for these grid lines. You need to find where the grids are. Don't guess at it. You know, this is a good point. It's going through where the grids are crossing each other. Don't guess it like this and try to read what this point is. That's not a good idea. So we will go over those and see what you got for that slope. Rate of change is the same as slope. And delta right here, if it didn't show up anywhere else, that means, you should know this from science class, change. And we will be going over this as well to make sure that you heard it all and you made note of it in your notes. And that's it for slope.